right, we are back for our third and last session in this series, and I'm so excited that Genevieve is back in her car.
I had to give my public what they want.
Thank you. So Genevieve Gaignard is here with us, our artist in residence, and today we are talking in this last session with her about her experience navigating the LA art scene. So I've been waiting for this one, Genevieve, because I got lots of questions for you. A lot of people are interested. This is probably the part that most people are most interested in, want to learn about, want to understand. So can I start off with a simple question? Why LA versus New York? I mean, you're on the East Coast already. You grew up on the East Coast. It was a shorter distance. But what was the motivation behind pursuing your career in Los Angeles versus New York? Oh no, Genevieve. There you are.
Is it not working? Oh, of course.
You just froze for a minute. It's okay.
Lord help us.
That's all right. Those earrings say everything. They save the day.
If this keeps happening, I can try something else, but you'll let me know. And we can start over if we have to.
I will. So tell.
So basically, I was saying is that I've always kind of been, I usually say terrified, but I guess the word should be more intimidated by New York. And when you just like focus in on the art scene and like what that means to like be in this really hustling, bustling city where like everything is happening, and I just get kind of stressed when I'm there, or like thinking about when I was younger going there. Even when I was in grad school, we would take trips there, and I would just be like, okay, we did our class. Okay, now like someone help me to the train. I need to get out of here.
Right.
And, you know, I never was that person either, though, that was like, oh, I have dreams to, like, go to Hollywood and, you know, make it big, but be a star. So if, you know, who's to say it wouldn't have been New York if I didn't have that opportunity to, like, travel with my thesis show to Los Angeles. And, you know, LA is a big place, too, and lots of things are happening, but it felt more like my experience in, you know, rural Massachusetts, in the sense of like, you know, it takes you like 20 minutes to get everywhere in LA on a good day. Mm-hmm. And that's, you know, we're used to driving to get to places out here too, you know? Right. I remember I would always have to like drive to Amherst or Hadley if I wanted to like do something that was a little more fun and like go shopping, malls and stuff like that. So it felt in that sense like, oh, this feels a little more familiar. And I do like that kind of that feeling of being in your car and being able to like observe and look around, where in New York I feel like you have to like focus on like where you're going and just like keep your head down and just like, you know. It's just like a faster pace that I think has always kind of been a little bit not my vibe. Although like I've worked up to like more like when I visit there now, I have a little more comfortability, you know? Mm-hmm. So it's, you know, it's not to say that I wouldn't have figured it out if I did end up making that my choice, but LA just spoke to me in the sense of just like it moves a little slower.
Yeah.
If I have to like really think about it and break it down. Yeah, I guess that would be.
So it was a little bit of serendipity with the show happening in LA and then being able to be there and experience kind of that pace. So it sounds like you did think about, and which I think is smart, your comfort level in terms of, you know, where you want to live and how you actually establish a place to practice, that it to you was much more comfortable in LA than New York. And it just kind of happened that way. You said your senior thesis show actually went to LA. I lost you again, Genevieve. We're not having as much luck with the car, even though it's so much cooler. Okay, we're gonna give her, there she is.
Okay, I just switched to a different Wi-Fi situation, so hopefully that
Okay,
works.
okay. So yeah, no, I was just saying that it seemed like it was a little bit of serendipity as well as an opportunity to be able to find a place where you felt more comfortable, knowing the art center, and a little bit more your pace. But then you said your thesis show went to LA. So tell us a little bit about that. So this was at the end of your Yale experience.
Yeah. So our show, you know, we were really fortunate. Like our show went to New York at Flag Arts Foundation, so that kind of got me, I think, in the door with them, and they kept an eye on me because I've shown there since.
Right.
And then yeah, so when the show traveled to LA, it just was like, okay, I have to go because I have to install it, you know?
Okay. Yeah.
And I remember we didn't even like ship all of the same objects because it was kind of taking its own form. I had less space than I did in New York. So in that sense of like being kind of new to the idea of like what it is to be an installation artist, even though I wasn't really thinking about that, I have been pretty flexible and like, you know, if this show has to be redone or recreated somewhere else, like making minor adjustments to make it work for the space that I'm given, you know?
Right.
Um,
Was it a choice to go and install? Could you have sent the work, or was it part of, part of the deal that you would go and install?
well, I remember having a conversation with the gallerist. At first, I was told that only parts of the work would be shipped, but that was based off of one of my classmates who was technically like, you know, curating our show. And so I had the conversation with the gallery that was hosting our show. And so I kind of basically like pleaded, like, I need all of this stuff to stay together. Like, this is my vision. You know, yes, I'm flexible to a certain extent, but it didn't feel like you could just show a couple parts of it to make it feel like the whole story was being told.
Right, right.
So she was like, I believe in you. Like, let's do this. I'll ship all of your stuff out and we'll figure it out, you know?
That's amazing.
You know, there were a lot of parts to that. You know, I had it displayed on the screen for us last time. And so I was just like, I need to do this. And like, I will, you know, make it look amazing. Just
That's
like,
great.
and
Yeah,
I'll fly out there. I'll figure it out. Just like
right.
if you ship it there, then I'll make it work.
Okay, so two things that totally makes me think about is first, how artists, no matter where they are in their careers, always have to negotiate. Like negotiate their space, negotiate the timeline, negotiate the shipping. And I think that's really insightful. Was that something you knew you had to do, or is it just kind of instinctual? Because there are a lot of people that may be intimidated by having to negotiate those sort of things. How does that feel for you, even now, but specifically then?
I don't even know if I was thinking of it like I was negotiating. I was still right out of grad school, and I just felt like I was having an emotional breakdown with this gallerist. And so I think she just felt bad for me. So she was like, we'll get it here. Don't worry.
That's a tactic. I mean,
When you have when you have a lot of parts to your work, like after the show's done and it hasn't sold, like you're trying to figure out, you know, how am I going to store all this stuff and where is it going to live? And, you know, like that's kind of a thing that people don't really think about always.
yeah.
And, you know, and the hope is that work sells so that the galleries don't have to then ship it back and all that stuff.
Right.
And I'd
Right.
already kind of convinced her to ship it out there. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and yeah, so I don't think there was a real tactic per se.
Yeah, it was
But
just wanting to get it done.
Yeah.
But it's part of it. It's part of it, and even if it's not conscious, I think.
And I think it, like, having her see how passionate I was about it, maybe was also, when you see that an artist is really passionate about what they're doing, then you want to take that leap with them, because that is what being a gallerist is in a lot of ways.
Right.
Is like, believing in someone, whether their work is going to like speak to everyone or not.
Right. And then how much, okay, so if we look at, I'm just trying to paint a picture for a lot of young artists about some of the things that you may need to do that, you don't know what you don't know, negotiating space, shipping, needing to fly out there, all those different expenses that are incurred in order for you to move forward. Do you feel like, I'm sure it's very different for you now, given the amount of time, the different successes you've had, but do you find that it's just on a different scale, and maybe in different situations you probably know a little bit better now, but is there still a sense of that this is a lot broader, like there's not a big process, but there is a process to this. It's not just, has that changed for you, the perception of how it was supposed to work out, or how you do this at the beginning? Feel like you know more now? Is it easier now? All those sorts of things. How is that? How has it changed?
I mean, it's changed, and there are a lot of parts to it. The cool thing with where I'm at in my career now is that I'm able to have a studio manager. So I have someone on my team that's looking out for me, that's catching the things that I miss. There's someone to have like dialogue with in between like you and the gallery.
Right.
Or wherever you're showing,
Right. Reminds me of a story. I had an artist that was here in North Adams, and they got an opportunity to work with an artist who they really admired at one of our local institutions, and they just got to observe the installation and all that good stuff. And one of I think the big realizations that artist had, which was a little discouraging but necessary, was no matter at what level that artist is working, or the cachet or the reputation, they are still negotiating like what will go where, and how can I put this, and why can't I have that, or all these things. And it doesn't matter, this is somebody that is world renowned, it has, all these things, but it never really, it still requires that. But I think that that's a really good understanding. Okay, so rewinding.
Okay.
When you got to LA and you were starting out, how did you establish, like, just basic things, like how did you establish or find a place to live and a studio space? How did you do that?
So when I flew out to LA for the thesis show, the idea was that it would be up for about a month, the kind of 4 to 5 week, period that shows usually are. And it just so happened that I had a relative from my dad's side that lived out there. And both my parents knew her, but I had never met her or spoke with her. But I think my mom had reached out to her, and she was like, oh, I would love to host her while she's here. And she was my cousin, but she was a bit older than me. And so she's more like an aunt, But I just remember being like, okay, I'm flying really far away, and I am going to an airport and looking for someone that I've never met before. And like, I had my mom give me a picture of her, but it was like when she was younger. So it was like not really the easiest like thing. But as soon as like we spotted each other, it like worked out, And she's such a sweet lady. Like, she gave me her room like while I was like, for that first, she's like, you can have my room for the first week before your show opens, like it was very cute. And she's like, then you're on the couch. I was like, I'll take it. And then we'll probably go back to other parts of that story later, but so I do remember, you know, after the show, the opening and everything of the show, I was kind of exploring LA, and then at first I wasn't like, oh, I'm definitely going to move here. You know, it took a little while, and then I was like, okay, things are starting to kind of make some sense here. So I think it was maybe I was there for 3 weeks in, and then I was like, oh, I have a week to figure this out if I want to move back here. So I remember just like scrolling on Craigslist and looking for apartments that were, or you know, whoever was looking for a roommate, and I think it ended up being, yeah, I think there was like one place that really sounded like it made sense. It was a couple, and I made it so I was able to meet them before I left, and so I would have like a month to like get my stuff figured out in Massachusetts and then come back. So yeah, they met me and they said, we have a few other people that were, you know, that we have meetings with, but we'll get back to you. And I'm pretty sure that it was like the next day they actually were like, we decided we just really liked you. Like, it's fine. Like, we're not going to take any other people. So I was like, great. So I'll be back October 1st. I will be there and we'll figure it out. So that was pretty much what I did. So I just went on Craigslist. My cousin went with me to see the space because she was like, you're not going there by yourself, you know? And I was like, okay, fine. And it was like one of those really big apartment buildings that has like hundreds of people living there and, you know, different wings. And I was just like, I didn't know that much about the place. I didn't even know which area I wanted to be in. But being there for that month and just kind of like scoping out the different areas was helpful for me. So I ended up being like, okay, yeah, Silver Lake area kind of seemed like the vibe where all the hipsters were. So but I should probably plant myself there first.
Did you, I mean, in those 3 weeks, did you meet a lot of other artists? Well, obviously it was nice to be with your, you know, I guess
classmates
cohort, but how was that? Was it quick meeting other artists and kind of knowing, because did you have a car?
When I was there for that month, I didn't have a car. So I think I Ubered a little bit. I don't even know if that was like a big thing yet. And I rented a car a couple times, but I met this one guy who I always, whenever we're still hanging out, I'll be like, this was my first friend in LA. And so he was an artist that was also working with this gallery at the time. His name is Ray Anthony Barrett, and he's still a good friend, and he just was a solid person like that would just, you know, would say, oh, do you want to come by my studio? That would be awesome. Oh, I'm going to this opening. Do you want to go with me? And even just him knowing a little bit of how the gallery worked, he was like kind of a sounding board for that. Funny enough, he is now a chef. He kind of took his creative, ways of being like in a different direction. But Ray was definitely like my person there. And then also, my classmates, it was a group of 10 of us. And I think 3 of them were already from LA.
Okay.
So they were moving back to LA. And then there was 2 or 3 of us that were choosing to move to LA, not being like where we were from. Right. And so that also was a big help. One of my friends and classmates, Erin Desmond, she lived in Venice Beach. And so like literally a block away, like you could go just like walk out her door and basically get to the beach. And so like that was it. There's so many different like versions of LA experiences, you know? So I was just like having when I was first in LA during that 4 weeks that I was visiting, you know, I was just like, oh, wow, this is LA. This is so like the movies and everyone just wants to go to the beach. And so it was nice to have a couple different perspectives of,
Right.
or get an understanding that's like, okay, this is, you know, Venice is totally different than what's going on in Echo Park and
Right.
and all different areas. I
So,
don't know.
okay, so you found a place to live. Where did you set up your studio?
So I drove across country
Mm-hmm.
with my dad. So we
Aw, that's so
drove across
cute.
country. And then, so he kind of got me settled. And then, you know, he hung out with his cousin that he hadn't seen in a while. So they got to connect. And I didn't really figure out the studio thing at first.
Mm-hmm.
I was really just like, I need to be here and then I'll figure it out. And I was there for a year. And I was talking to Aaron, my studio manager, and I was just like, I really don't have the best story in terms of like setting an example for someone. Cause like a lot of things that I did that I'm just like, this wouldn't work for most people. And I don't even encourage it for most people. But I just kind of, I don't know how when I look back, I don't know how I actually got through a couple things. You know, I definitely, I had the support of my parents who kind of gave me the okay to just have the first year that I was there to not worry about basically room and board. And that I totally took advantage of. So, I didn't actually have an extra, like a job that I had extra money coming in. But when I think back, I'm like, it would have been nice to just even have like a waitressing job or, you know, work in a coffee shop or something just to have like a little bit more income so I could have, you know, had a balanced meal. Because I think about, you know, I'd be like, oh, I got my money and there's enough for me to go grocery shopping, and I'm going to grocery shop at the 99-cent store. And the cool thing about the 99-cent stores in LA is like they have produce and stuff, so it's like it's not that awful, but it's
So true.
I was just like, okay, I'm gonna get all these vegetables and these ramen packs, and I'm gonna make fancy ramen.
Yeah, it's true.
And yeah, there were definitely some times where I was just like, oh my God, there's no space for me here. I moved, the people I moved in with were really nice, but they were a couple, so I kind of felt like I was in there.
The third wheel.
Or so like, you know, they'd be out in the living room because they've already been there for a long time and like they're watching their shows and everything. And I'm like, I'm just gonna go take my ramen into my room, you know, like, and again, like they were really nice, but I felt I kind of still do this. I'm just like, I don't know. I just was like, I need to be alone. So, and then, you know, Ray would invite me to different things. So he would introduce me to his friends. Some were writers, some were other artists. And, yeah, he was great. He would take me to all different places, just like restaurants or, you know, cool spots. And I remember he had introduced me to this one woman who was an artist, and I can't tell you how, like, the exact time of all of it, but towards the end of my first year there, she was going back to like visit family in China or do a residency or something like that in China, but that's where she's from originally. And she didn't want to get rid of her place, but she was looking for someone to sublet it basically, but keep some of her stuff there. So I had like my own space, but her stuff was there, and then she had an additional person that rented.
Okay.
So, but this space was in a gorgeous building, but it was in the basement of that gorgeous building. And I remember the first experience I had with a giant cockroach, like, and that was pretty normal for me in my studio. Like, it was like little dinosaurs walking around, you know, because those things don't die easy. And like, yeah, I just was not a fan of trying to get rid of them, even though I was like scared of them, and they move really slow. They weren't the flying ones.
Right. Well, that's good. Yeah.
I remember making a pair of shoes, because that's when I was like making the shoes still. And I had purchased online like fake cockroaches, and I had
No.
cut a whole pair of shoes in them.
No.
And I remember the shoes were sitting on a shelf, and another like a real cockroach was like, "Oh my God, my family!" But yeah.
Yeah. No.
So my what I'm saying is, I didn't have a job and I didn't have like a space for a while, but I still created. I would make the shoes in my room.
In your room.
And you know, if I went out and made pictures, then you know I would go out with someone. But you know, I had friends that I could go out to help me shoot if I needed to. But I didn't have something I was making those things for.
Sure.
So it's like you're right out of school and you're just like, oh, I used to just like have to have a reason to make something because I had to show it to the class and whatever. And I have pretty much endless resources and, you know, stuff like that. And that wasn't there.
So I was going to ask you kind of to break down for me after you had moved there, you know, what your priorities were. But when you describe what happened, I'm wondering, you know, it is such a great opportunity to have the ability to not have to work, even though it might be challenging. But what prompted that decision for you? You know, I mean, because I think part of establishing yourself is networking, and I wonder, was that a priority for you when you got there? If I don't have to worry about my food and my housing, then I'm just going to go and meet as many people as possible. I mean, what was the motivation behind that? Was it like, I'm going to get gallery representation, I'm going to meet more artists, I'm going to try and sell work, I want to try and find some shows? What was the motivation?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to obviously have my own income, but it's, you know, the job that I wanted didn't have a clear path.
Right.
And so when I would think about getting a different type of job that was far removed from that goal, it just made me feel like depressed, you know? I just was like, I don't want to do that. I don't even want to waste my time. Like, and I don't even, you know, everyone has different circumstances, so I don't even want to say that in a negative way, but that's how it felt to me, you know? I probably would have been able to make all the same things happen, and I probably would have met more people like from other pockets of, you know, outside of the art world. So there's pros to like letting yourself, you know, get involved in other avenues for additional income. But for whatever reason, I was just really, you know, turned off by the idea of even just, you know, I was like, oh, I could get a job at Home Depot part-time, then I would have, you know, a discount on supplies. I don't know. I was just trying to like find something that would make me excited to do that, but it just wouldn't happen. And a lot of the people I met, even just installing my show, and people that worked at the galleries, they were all artists themselves.
Right.
And I'm thinking like, oh man, like, even because my mom at one point was like, well, why don't you try and just get a job at the gallery? And I was just like, I don't think they'll take me seriously. Like, they won't look at my work if I'm like they're working for them because they're, I don't know, that was just my thought process. Whether that's all true or not, I can't say for sure. But I think that was just like the state of mind I was in.
So it was
And
like this, you just wanted to immerse yourself in being an artist. I mean, I think that's a genuine, legit.
yeah, and I think that
Not everybody gets that.
something that isn't talked about too, and there isn't really ever a window of time allotted for this, is like a lot of these programs are really intense, and you've been beat up for 2 years or 3 years, however long your program is, and you just want to kind of reboot in a way, or just like lick your wounds, you know? And so that, I think, was also happening during that time. And I'm in a completely new place, so I just want to like learn where I am and like just take it all in, you know?
Right.
And so there were times like I didn't go out, I didn't do anything because I didn't have money. I mean, it doesn't cost anything to like go out for a walk, you know?
Right.
But if like you're walking and then all of a sudden you're tired and you're thirsty and you're hungry, you know, like those things start to like become an issue. So you have to like plan for that, you know?
Right. You have to plan for thirst.
You have to plan for thirst. You have to throw some dry ramen in your bag and just like chomp on that. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think, you know, those are early sacrifices, but it sounds as though I think there is there's validity to that, you know, your pursuit of being so specific and so committed to establishing yourself that you did not want to distract yourself or be perceived as not being totally committed. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. And, you know, so when I was thinking about asking you how difficult it was to connect with other artists, it sounds as though it wasn't that difficult at all. I mean, it being an art center for the most part, but it sounds like having your show there or the group show that you're in there made a lot of difference.
Yeah, but it's like you're instantly in this world, like you're like in school and then you're in the art world and you're just like, I don't know the lingo. I don't know what people are looking for, and everyone wants to know your story and who you are. What do you do? And you're just like, oh, I'm an artist. Oh, great, another artist. You know, it felt like that in the beginning, you know? And but the cool thing is there's pretty much an opening every weekend.
Okay.
So you really have that opportunity to just show up and see what's happening. And even I would go to shows and I'd be like, I'm not even excited about this art, but then I was just like, that means there might be a spot for me if I can make something that's like, you know,
right,
a little more what I feel like is lacking or something like that, you know?
I've always believed, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry.
I've always believed that, you know, being an artist is definitely about creating your story, like your narrative. So it's interesting that you said, like, you had to, like, what was your story? Or keep explaining that I'm an artist. Or I'd be like, oh, just another artist. And you had talked about in your previous session about how you helped yourself to stand out by making your own shoes and things like that. And having people look at you rather than having to go up to them and, hi, I'm Genevieve and I'm an artist, you know. And I think that's a really important thing, Genevieve, for young artists to understand and appreciate, that it is very much up to you to take the initiative and to be creative about the way in which you approach the art world, because there are so many, but it seems like you found all these amazing opportunities. But that is part of being an artist. That's part of their responsibility to actually advance yourself.
Yeah. And just like reading the room, reading the audience, and like reading the crowd. Like when you go into those spaces, okay, I'm an artist. No one knows who I am. No one knows what I do. I don't even really have anything to show them per se. You know, maybe I don't have a website. Because I didn't have a website right out of grad school.
Mhm.
And a lot of people are way more on that, I feel like, these days, but it just seemed like, for me, I was already creating the shoes. The shoes seemed to be a cool conversation starter.
Right.
And between going to openings with Ray and that collector friend Danny first, like, those were, you know, entries into this world. But how was I going to stand? I wasn't going up to people and being like, "Hi, I'm Genevieve." You know,
Right.
I'm still not really that person, unless my art is there and I feel a little more like I can, you know,
Right. Right.
present myself in that way. But I would just kind of stand there, but I would always find like the one lady with like an outrageous outfit and be like, whoa, that's cool. Like, so she's standing out in that way, but she might just be there to just observe the art. And so I'm just like cataloging how people, you know,
Yeah.
there's that guy that's always taking pictures at these events, and like maybe if I'm in one of his pictures, you know, like those kinds of things, like that, those things get posted, and then it's like, who's that person that keeps showing up in these pictures and
So
things like
did you think about that strategically before you went, or was it something that, like, an understanding or realization that you acquired as you continued to go?
that. It was through doing, and
Okay.
through even just advice from the few people that I was, you know, that were new to me that I had met in LA. Because
Hmm.
I had my friends from school, but we were all kind of, you know, scrambling, like, how do we get in the door, you know?
How obviously you did it because you were trying, you know, you're working towards something, but how uncomfortable was that for you doing that? Was it,
Showing
I was just like, I'm just gonna do this, or was it like, yeah, whatever, I'm just gonna come? I mean, was that difficult for you to think about that strategically? Was it just like, or just something like, you know what, I'm just gonna do this? Was it ever
in
uncomfortable?
terms of going to the openings and trying to
Yeah.
like
Hmm.
make a statement through my clothing or whatever I could do, you know?
Yeah.
Because
However you do it.
if I knew an opening was coming, then I would maybe plan, you know, like Danny might say, oh, this is going to be like a big deal opening, yada yada, it's going to be there. I still might not have known who that was. If he said someone's name, I would never be like, I wouldn't necessarily act like I knew who it was, but I'd just like take note, and then I would look the person up later, you know?
Hmm. Hmm.
um but then I would set the goal, like, oh, if this seems like it's going to be a big opening, okay, so maybe I'll go to the consignment shop and see what they have for shoes that are kind of had like enough space on them that I could really make a standout shoe to, like, I don't know, add stuff to it. I don't even know, like, I had just like random material and doilies, and you know, my mom would send me care packages. She's like, oh, thought you might be able to make art with this, and
Right. Right.
those are the things I was using. So I was still the shy person from like the ankles up. Like the shoes were doing their thing, and that would maybe bring people over to talk to me, but I wasn't
Right.
super outgoing. And Danny might introduce me. And I also can kind of read people where I'm like, if you're not interested, I'm not going to force you to like talk to me and like keep going. So I would just kind of have this kind of, I don't know how to say it, just like this way of slowly stepping away, as I felt like
Right.
I could just walk out of the circle if it felt like it wasn't really my thing, you know? And I would always have my phone with me. Even I remember my phone had died one time, and I was just like, oh, I gotta take this call. Like I didn't even have to, do you know, like, if you, there's
Everybody
ways to
take
get
note of
out
that.
by
Always bring
software,
your phone. Yeah.
preferably a charger too. Uh,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, the reason I bring that up is because I've talked to a lot of artists who that can be basically paralyzing. Not everybody can do that. A
The
lot,
interacting, yeah.
yeah, very overwhelmed by that experience. Very overwhelmed and don't necessarily, it's not for a lack of wanting to, but there's definitely there is a skill, and it is a necessity to be able to do that. And for a lot of people, that is not very easy. So I that's why I wanted you to share that, because I think that
it got
like,
easier.
oh, they're not going to like me. I just can't,
Yeah. I never really thought about that part too much. I just was like, it got easier. It was always nice to feel like you had your buddy to go with. So having someone that you can kind of, just show up with feels better, even if you don't hang out with them the entire time.
Right.
But it's still, to this day, it's like way easier for me to go into that space if it's about my own work than if I'm just going into a space of observing the work for the first time, especially when people maybe know who you are and then they want to know what you think right away, and you're just like, I'm taking it in, and I want to, like, I don't want to have to like perform for you in this moment, because I'm still taking it in.
Right. Yeah. But I think also that you can't put a high enough value or premium on the ability to develop a network. I think, regardless of whether that's the art friend that you met and you go to openings with, or if you're fortunate enough to meet someone who becomes a patron or collector of your work. And I think that's also goes back to the beginning of our conversation about how often you can release that sort of anxiety if you understand that, as long as you can kind of convey that passion you have about your work, that people pick up on that. I mean, the work has to be strong too, to be passion. But I think that those are things that you as an artist need to capitalize on in order to propel yourself. So moving along here, I mean, you have had a considerable amount of success in Los Angeles. Obviously, you made the right decision. It was a good place for you. You thrived. I think that it definitely helped. Again, no one knows what sort of conditions are going to be, whatever serendipitous, things happen for you. And it's not the same for everyone. But I think it seemed like a really good path. And you just even deciding to go to LA to be a part of the show, you could have easily had the work set and never have gone. I think were important decisions. But what would you attribute, however you define the success that you've had in Los Angeles, what do you most attribute it to? I mean, if other artists are listening and thinking, well, hell, I'm going to go to LA. Like, what do you think really is most significant about that choice and what it's done for you in your career?
Yeah, I think while you were kind of saying all of that, I had this thought in my head that I remember people around the time when I moved there, people started to talk about, like, a lot of people from New York are talking about moving to LA. You can get more space for cheaper, and so I wasn't aware of all of that, but I think something was kind of brewing already, that people were starting to go there, and people were starting to pay more attention to it. And so I think that had a lot to do with it. Not that I was aware of that at the time.
Right.
I do remember hearing conversations about that. One of my classmates had Hank Willis Thomas over and invited me over, and I remember him specifically being like, oh yeah, I'm thinking about moving out here. I think some of his fabricators work out here, are out there. And so he was kind of toying with that idea, and I'm just, at the time, I was like really just being like, oh my God, we're sitting with Hank Willis Thomas. I wasn't really.
Next question, were you starstruck or were you even listening? Yeah.
Of that, but after a few different people saying it, I was just like, yeah, okay, this is like kind of the buzz. So I'm glad I got in on this before it seemed like a thing to do.
Right.
Not that you can really gauge that, but it is, if you want to be that person that does like a little bit more research, to just like, maybe New York and LA aren't the place to be for you. for whatever reason, but where just like maybe researching a few different cities' art scenes and just seeing what they have to offer. Are there art museums in that area? Are there
Right.
art galleries? What types of shows are there? Very well move to Chicago, and there's a lot of access to galleries and museums there, and it's close enough to New York, like that kind of
Right.
idea of like, can you be close enough without being right on top of it if it feels too intimidating?
Right.
I don't know if that's answering your question really, but
Yeah. Yeah. Do you feel like there's anything left to do in LA that you haven't already done or at all in terms of your career?
nope, I'm pretty much dried up there. I'm joking.
Okay, we gotta go. Thanks.
That was it. No, I'm pretty much always wanting the next thing, the new show, the new opportunity outside of the art world. Like where can your art start to seep into the bigger picture of like a place that really like almost puts a stamp that you're known in the art world, but you start to trickle out and be known even by people that don't really pay much attention to the art world per se.
Right.
And I think I'm still kind of far from that, but there's still opportunities coming my way that start to have a conversation about like expanding beyond and like, public art and those types of things.
Do you, so if you were to describe LA, I was just thinking, because I have another question that's related to what you just said. But I'll ask you, because I know a lot of people, if they are thinking about, oh, I want to go to LA or I want to try it out. What are 3 words that would best describe the art scene in LA? Okay, you could have more than 3.
I was like, I don't remember that question. 3.
I gotta throw you a little bit.
I know.
How would you describe it?
Just describing it. Doesn't matter how.
Yeah, the art scene. Yeah.
I would say it's interesting because it's a bit like that's kind of a big stamp to put on it, but there's so many different pockets in LA that I don't even know if I can describe like who's where. Do you know? It's like I know there was a big group of galleries in the area of Culver City, and that used to be the place to like be in like the gallery scene. But there was like all this like energy bubbling around downtown, and that's kind of where it's starting to be more looked at now. A lot of folks have moved out of Culver City, but I just know that wherever I would go to, like if I went to a show downtown, I'd always be like, I'm seeing people I've never seen before. So it's very big, and there's so many different galleries at different levels. I think when we say the art world, it's like assumed that it's like resonating at this higher vibration, and it's just like, no, there's so many layers that there are entry points. There are galleries wanting to, get connected with young artists with fresh new ideas that just, even if it's one show, it's a foot in the door, and they might not have a ton of money, but you're making connections with people. So I think it's just like having an understanding that it's bigger than what you can imagine. And I'm not even talking like a coffee shop, having a show at a coffee shop, which is like more the vibe that would be like out here if we were to like have a first show. Do you know?
Right.
And that's not a negative. It's just like how different it is, It's like someone could have a really small storefront and turn that into a gallery. And, you know, it has 0 wall space, but like you have like 3 pieces and you can have a show. Do you know, like that's kind of the level that it can start there.
Right.
And I didn't like, I just happened to be wherever I landed in that really big place, that I happened to be more in the kind of like my first gallery. Actually, my first galleries show, like their gallery was in Venice, and I'm like, oh, maybe that's because I spent so much time in Venice Beach. Like, so it was on Venice Beach, closer than my friend's house that I stayed at, like that first year.
Wasn't it a house before, or like a home?
Yeah, Shulamit had purchased that house and had the house kind of turned into a gallery.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you wouldn't even maybe know it was a gallery when you walked by it,
Right.
but that was kind of its charm, you know.
I think a lot of what you're describing too is being flexible and understanding that timing has a lot to do with things. Like, I think also like always being ready. Like, you've been ready. You know, you've talked throughout all of our sessions about always making work. You don't necessarily need a studio to do it, but when you're ready, you're ready. Knowing people, making yourself available to them, networking through that. And then I think that, you know, I've always heard other artists tell other artists, you know, it's about the work, right? I mean, the proof is in the pudding if you invest in that. But I think also too, when you describe LA, it makes me think, I've always thought it is a really great place to start, because you can, I mean, I think that even a lot of artists that have come from the East Coast have like reinvented themselves or done something different. I think that's really amazing. And then you had mentioned Danny first, and he has the cabin gallery, right? It's a small space that's dedicated to one artist.
Yeah, he actually is, and that's another thing that's really great with, you know, Instagram. You can really reach out to these people in a way, or at least just follow what they're doing. So I got connected with Danny kind of earlier in that I don't think he had a ton of shows in his space, and his whole thing is that it's more like a residency. So he'll invite an artist to work in his studio, which is a huge studio space right off of La Brea. So you're like plopped in this really cool area, and then you get this live workspace, and then once you've created the work, you are then invited to show it in this little 1-room cabin that he had built. And it's all like clean, pristine white walls, like a gallery, but it's really tiny.
It's the same dimensions as the Unabomber's cabin. Of course you'd freeze on me when I said that.
This is a crazy collection of Kehinde Wiley pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry, our connection.
Yeah, you freezed. It's okay.
So sorry. Are we back?
Yes. Just rewind for me like maybe 60 seconds.
What was the last thing you remember hearing?
Well, you had said it was a pristine cabin, and I said that it was actually the same dimensions as the Unabomber's shed.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that is always the thing that's brought up.
Well, I had to.
I think he says that so that it gets people's attention. It has, yeah, I think it's just like he based it off those dimensions as just being this almost like kid-like drawing of a house. I don't know where you get the exact dimensions of the Unabomber's cabin, but he found
somewhere on the World Wide Web. But the installation that you put in that space was amazing. You know, and I think when we talk about dimensions.
Yeah, well, for me, it felt like just creating, I had a little house to like make my installations in. So, and to be honest, I remember feeling really homesick at around that time. And so I wanted to create something that referenced home. I also the cool thing with Danny is he introduced me to this woman who is a collector, but she also at the time lived at this really amazing house up in, what is that area that the Kardashians lived in or still live in? I don't know what. Hidden Hills?
Calabasas?
Oh, is that near Hidden Hills?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. So anyway, I was like invited to her home, and as a gift, I gave her she was letting me shoot some of my photographs at her house.
Okay.
And so I was like, oh, I'll bring her this catalog that I had made of my shoes to thank her for letting me have the space to shoot. Because Danny's very much that person, like, oh, I know this person, they might be able to help you with it. Like, he'll just ask. He doesn't really, like, feel any type of way about asking for you. And so when she agreed, and I was just like, oh, great. Me and my friend are coming here to shoot some photographs. Here's the catalog. And, like, by the end of, like, me bringing all of my materials and, like, costumes in, she was like, I want to buy all of these shoes. And I was like, what? So that was actually my first sale.
Wow.
Like, my gallery didn't even really do the sale, like,
Right.
But I was still connected with the gallery, so there was still that, like, split situation that happens. But
that's another session, everybody. The split situation.
That, yeah, most artists do not get the full price of what their work is sold for, but that's, that makes sense when you're with a gallery that's, working for you as much as you're working. But like you said, that's another story. But the cool thing is, like, I, through this gesture, got my sales started, basically, because that was really the first thing I remember selling.
How did you meet Danny? Was that
Danny went to the thesis show and was into the work and just was schmoozing with me and just would be like, oh, hey, oh, do you know this person? He's just like, he likes introducing people, and he's just that kind of guy.
I think there's a distinction. This is another session, but there is a distinction between collectors and patrons. And patrons invest in the artist and their success, and then consequently also, benefit, versus just purchasing the work. And that's what to me, that is what he represents as a patron.
I've had a good amount of those types of folks come into my world. So, I'm still friendly with Danny. I don't see him as much, but as my world expands, like, there are more people that are definitely patrons of the artists, and he's specifically in helping me kind of expand on what it looks like for me to be an artist,
Right.
And that's for everyone.
Yeah, and I think you've touched on a lot of things, that different artists have different pursuits and objectives, but also that I think, in terms of advancing your career and negotiating your space and networking and all those sorts of things, different people in your network play different roles. And, and I don't want to take away, I mean, it is very altruistic to some extent, but there is a benefit to patrons helping you, because consequently it does benefit them too. So I think we should understand that it is still, when we talk about this art world and navigating, that there is a mutual benefit, there's an exchange, not that any of that is more or less valuable, but that's important. And I think that's why we're having this conversation. When you think about Los Angeles, what was most surprising to you about LA? Like, and I don't know, it could have been something when you first arrived, or it could have been something that you realized after your first or second year. But what was most surprising to you about LA?
I would have to say that reality check of just how diverse the world is, because I was coming from such a small bubble of a very specific, I don't know, type of people and environment. And And I'm not knocking that, because like we talked about even in the first, video, that I want to be back here. I'm drawn to this place, this is home. But leaving, and what LA did is it gave me perspective on a bigger picture. It helped me expand my story and see how it could affect in a bigger way,
Mm-hmm.
and that ultimately like challenged me and just put a new lens over my eyes so I could just really see beyond what I had grown up around,
Right.
And I think it still does that for me.
Yeah.
So I don't think I'll ever not have that be part of my world,
Right.
I think that's huge with anyone's practice, even if they're kind of stuck in that bubble of like, you just need new things to walk in front of you, to pass by you.
That's right.
And LA is continues to grow, which is, I think, more of the feel of like it's almost pushing me out, in the sense of just wanting to be a little more slow paced again.
Right.
When I first moved to LA, it was not, and that was, almost 6 years ago. And just in that short amount of time, it's just grown so much. And
Right.
the traffic is just beyond, it's a lot. I take most of my meetings in the car because I'm literally just sitting in traffic going 1 mile an hour.
Yeah, that is the conundrum.
But that wasn't how it was at first,
See, that's so funny. I grew up in LA, and that's always how it's felt. The scale of it and how but it is part of a lifestyle, and that's not for everybody. But you learn to adapt.
Yeah.
So in that is the traffic what is least attractive to you about LA? What do you least like about it?
What do I least like about it? Yeah, I mean, yeah, traffic would be an easy answer for sure. And then I guess just that I'm not near, like, I've made a new family, an extended family in LA, but there's something that's always drawing me back to where my family is. I'm not even like really close. Like, I'm not some families like have to be with each other a lot all the time, and that's not even how my family operates, but it's just a feeling like I need to be close in case,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I don't know. So just being closer to family and knowing no matter where like my home base is, I can just hop on a plane, when we can do that again, and
Right.
get to where I need to go.
Yeah.
Mask and all.
That's right. And gloves. So all of this, what would you say to artists that are contemplating LA? Like, if you think back on this, I'm assuming you say that you made the right choice over moving to New York. Yeah.
I don't really compare the two as like, there's other cities one can go to.
Mm-hmm.
I always, before I went to LA, I always thought I wanted to go to Portland, Oregon.
That has
And
become, yeah.
and not even like, when I got there, I was like, oh, there's not the art scene that I was like hoping that there could be, or like what I envisioned. And there aren't a lot of people of color there. And I was just like, this is not, it's beautiful and it's hip and it's, got great food and the houses are cute and whatever. But it wasn't, it, I think I'd been in LA, and this is just during that first initial visit. Maybe I was there for 2.5 weeks. And then I was like, I want to go to Portland during this trip. Because that was I was like, I have to go to the Ace Hotel in Portland and use the photo booth. And that was the girl that hadn't gotten out much, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then when I got to Portland, I was like, it's cute, but I like just had to go visit. It's a cool place to visit for me. But
Yeah.
it's just like, if you have a question, something I was thinking about as you were asking that question was like, well, I just kind of thought if it doesn't work out, I can come back. It's not like I can't come back.
Right.
And I even had some of my friends say that because I was living in Wendell at the time, and I was just like, I'm going to miss this place. And they're like, trust me, this is going to be literally like exactly where you left it, you know? And in some ways that's true. It was pretty much how I left it.
Right.
And when I come back, people are just like, wow, like you're the girl that got out of the small town. And then you come back and you're still, pretty much the same as you were. Like, I don't treat them any differently.
Right.
Because I feel like that was the community that encouraged me to go beyond.
Right.
And so I would say, just if there's a place that's felt like you've had a draw to go there, see if you can follow through with that. And just, even if it's like a trip for a week,
Right.
A road trip with some friends to check out a few different places.
Right.
So Baltimore was another place I was considering. It's not New York, but it's close enough. It's, thinking about those things where you can travel to those places if you want to and go to shows and show up places, but they have their own smaller art communities. And
Right. But I think a lot of this has to do with what you had first talked about in terms of your comfort level and what you're looking for. And I think you're right. You tried it out. You had an opportunity to try out both. I wonder now, like when you think about this journey, to me, I completely understand the wanting to come back to a place that that you consider home. But I think a lot of your ability to be able to consider that and do that comes from you having gone to LA. Like, it created more choices for you to be able to make.
Just gives you more perspective. Yeah. Because even someone could move to Boston, go to a city, just like see what else is there, you know?
Right.
Because you can always come back. And I say that loosely because, again, I had a supportive family, and at the same time, I think as much as they wanted me to like go and pursue my dream, they would have been fine with me just staying. Do you know? So, and I think there maybe are, young people that maybe their parents aren't as encouraging, but if you just have that kind of drive in you, and because you don't know what's going to happen there. Like, I basically, like, my parents gave me that year and I gave myself that year to like see if I could pull something together. But if it didn't happen, it wasn't going to be like, oh, you failed. It'd be like, that's awesome. You actually tried the thing that you wanted to do.
Right.
We're not, I think a lot of people play that scenario out in their minds and never actually like do the thing,
Right.
So they can't blame anyone but themselves because they let their overthinking get in the way, maybe.
I think I think that is a perfect way to put it. I mean, I think all of this comes back to what we talked about at the very beginning, even with the first pursuit, whether it was going to become a chef, all of those things, you took yourself out of this comfort space. You just decided to take the opportunity to explore it. Even the success that you had with, the navigating the schools, your undergraduate, then going to Mass Art, going to Yale, applying twice, all of these things. It's an amazing sequence. But from what you've described, there is just as much value in the process as there was in the outcome. Because you said you finally got into Yale, you thought that was it, and now you're like, there are so many more goals. I haven't even started that process yet. I think a lot of it is in the process, but I think a lot of it is what you're saying, is just taking those steps, and it's okay to fail and you can't always come back. But I always wonder how many artists don't see the possibilities beyond their physical or even, imaginary boundaries. It is possible. And I think you're a perfect example of all of that.
Yeah, and I think it's just a matter of, if you tried the thing and it didn't work out for whatever reasons, it just comes back to like reevaluating like the bigger picture and like shifting a few of your thoughts on things.
Right.
And I have to do that on a smaller scale, whether it comes down to different projects or hopes of certain things working out. It's not like it's easy what I'm doing.
Right.
So I'm doing, like, I'm living the goal like that I've set, like that dream of being a creative and selling my art. But there's so many parts to it that I'm not great at, and I have to outsource, or I have to ask advice, or I have to research, and that's okay, and sometimes like I'll have an idea and it's just like it's not going to happen, or you might be working with someone that just doesn't get your vision, and you kind of have to balance knowing that they might not be on your wave, but you don't want to lose the moment to kind of have access to show your stuff. Like, we didn't really get into this, but there's galleries are at all different levels, just like us artists kind of coming into the world of the arts and just like figuring out where we fit in and that. So just know there's a lot of obstacles.
Right.
And there's someone that's gone through it. Not, some people can hear advice, but they still have to experience it for themselves,
Mm-hmm.
and I try and take note, even when I have my studio manager, when I'm talking to Erin, I'm just like, okay, we might have a moment where we're like stressing or venting about a thing that happened, but then we're just like, okay, wait, we're just going to note this as we're not going to deal with it this way next time, or we're not going to, we're going to make sure this doesn't happen so we don't do that again, basically.
Right.
And just saying that out loud to acknowledge it, because I think a lot of folks get on like a pattern of like recreating the same like mistake because I don't know what is not clicking for them, but it's just like they're not reevaluating maybe, and
Right.
approaching it from another angle or whatever
Mm-hmm.
the situation might be. But there's just got to be, you got to be not so hard on yourself and open to help and other people's perspective.
Yeah. I think that's really important, because again, coming back to the reason we're doing this is that you don't know what you don't know. It is a lot of trial and error. And there is, even though we've called this Navigating the LA art scene, there is no map. There's no way to really know how to do it. So if you're not listening or taking the advice, or at least understanding how people have tried to navigate it, I don't think you're learning. And I think that you've definitely described ways in which you have to be flexible. I know you
more like Waze, where it takes you, that app Waze, it takes you like such a different way. You're just like, why am I going on this crazy back road? And then you're just like, oh, I just like avoided that whole line of traffic. That was amazing. It might have taken me way longer to get home, but at least my car was moving.
Right.
And if you think of that as an analogy of like you as an artist, like you're still moving, you're creating. And like,
Right.
maybe that person didn't show up or they didn't follow through with the call, but like, you're just gonna like blow their mind with the next piece you make, and they're gonna wish they had paid attention then, because you're not gonna be able to like actually work with them because this other bigger opportunity came, like it just,
Right.
it's interesting how it all kind of falls into place if you let
Yeah.
it.
Right. And I think, just keeping, like you said, and it sounds like, again, everything with you has always just been moving forward, which it's easy to let one situation become kind of like a roadblock rather than just figuring out how to just move it out of the way and take a different route. You talking about all of the things that you've done to this point and establishing yourself, and you've talked about creating a space outside of LA where you've spent the last 6 years and creating work. Just in your personal opinion, is that something that you feel that artists could do? I mean, there's a lot of debate around kind of, I like to call it the hustle that artists go through, who go to these spaces and are living at basically poverty level to make it happen in hopes of that right connection, the network, the right show, all of these things. I believe in that pursuit, but I do not believe in the quality of life for artists in terms of sustaining that kind of lifestyle at the expense of your practice. Unfortunately, I know too many people who have amazing talent and credentials, and that have been sucked into this black hole of that. And so I've always been really interested in spaces outside of art centers where artists can actually sustain a practice but still be able to engage. Do you think that there are places like that for artists, or do you feel that artists need to go to those art centers and for however long they can make it, it's worth it? And I do believe, I guess, a little bit of both. Like, I do feel that it is important to be there, but I don't know. I feel like there are other places where we can create an existence that is not substandard in order for them to sustain their practice. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that's being like even more of an issue now, where artists aren't having any access to, money or income, whether they had to have another job in order to be able to create their work, and that being gone. There's a lot of issues, and I think there's a lot of conversations that are happening right now. There's this one person I follow on Instagram, Larry. It's his Instagram is Young Global, and he's been posting a lot of Zoom conversations, inviting artists, curators, and just people in the art world to come together, collectors and whatnot, to have these conversations and brainstorming where we can kind of help each other. Because I don't know the answer to your question, like how to really shift that, but I think it starts with people wanting to support each other and having the conversations to come up with the means to at least have food on your table,
Right.
and
Yeah.
a roof over your head.
Yeah. I guess that's another session too.
Oh, there's so many sessions.
But that's why we're coming back. Genevieve's going to come back and do this with us again. But, we are so pleased to have you here with us and to have these sorts of conversations. We tried to create these first sessions for specifically our students at MCLA, but we're looking forward to opening this up to the community at large next week and do this all again. As I always do, I have to ask you the last question before we go. So, your rose and thorn for the day, Genevieve?
My thorn is my back is kind of messed up right now. But it's just like like I've probably mentioned in the other two talks, was that we have to like somehow motivate ourselves in these times, and meaning just like go for a walk around the block and just like move your body, because I've always kind of had back stuff, but it's like I was getting kind of in a slump and just not moving. And if it rained for 2 days, because I'm so used to the sunshine, I was just like, I can't go out what's happening? And, you know.
I'm only laughing because I'm in the same boat with you, but yeah, proceed.
I guess my rose is these new earrings that
Love those earrings. I love those earrings.
raffle situations. I mean, come on.
I love the green. That is the green.
The green.
It's
Emerald
the green.
Here I come.
So we, as I said, we're gonna do this all again, and Genevieve's gonna play music as we go out on this one, right? You're gonna pick us up. Okay.
It's already lined up.
Thank you. And we're gonna come back next week. You can sign up to participate. I think we're gonna get some people who want to ask you some questions. As always, I want to thank you for your time, and coming back in this car is really what I was after.
It's kind of our thing at this point.
It is our thing, and we're going to do this every Wednesday for the next. You're preaching through the fire, getting yourself. They make me do a TikTok dance, y'all. Okay, so we're going to come back next week. Thank you so much, Genevieve. Aaron, the studio manager, Veronica, the manager of Gallery 151, helped us immensely. And Genevieve, have a great rest of the day. I'm probably going to talk to you in 5 minutes.